networks of co-ops. They have literally replaced the local system. There are no more grocery stores or mainstream clinics or whatever in those neighborhoods, because they've all been just like delete, 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 as they've been replaced by activist initiated worker or consumer co-ops. So they've literally been able to say, sort of take territory. And but I mean, not only are we trying to realize this new way of, you know, democracy at the workplace, et cetera, and creating better products and better worker relations and all that, we're sustaining ourselves. I mean, that's the key here. Key ticky boo. I mean, no place is worse than New York in terms of rent and the fact that nobody can afford to live here, hardly. So that's a hard one. I mean, really hard one, because, you know, you can't afford to buy a place and live in it together. But in terms of food and education and healthcare, you can find alternatives, and elsewhere it's easier to find shelter as well. So, I mean, I think that, like, every day I look at the agenda of this building, for example, this community center and educational center, and I look at it and I say, okay, well, the next quarter, next 3 months, what percentage is opposed and what percentage is proposed? What percentage is critiquing and strategizing against the current system, and what percentage is creating the new one? And I try to keep it somewhat balanced. But the problem is, in New York anyway, that most people who are focused on opposing the current system, whether it's through, you know, opposing nuclear power or getting involved in elections or whatever, they're not really involved at all in the new economy, and vice versa. I mean, I'm one of the few people, there's some, but the great majority of people are more comfortable doing one or the other. And to me, that is the biggest challenge we face right now. We need more people to be doing both at the same time and coordinating it and getting both groups to realize the necessity of doing both. That's my
Melissa, before you go, could you tell us about how you developed this community center yourself? Like, where was the idea, and how did you create this, the Brooklyn Commons?
Well, the short version is, I got this building in an auction 22 years ago. I live in the neighborhood, and it was an old factory, and it went up for auction. And I had cash from my mother, and I bought it for $200,000. And I then didn't have enough money to turn it into, it was a factory, right? So you need a lot more money to turn it into something else, which took time. And I eventually, you know, I got tenants, time went by, I started the magazine. I wanted it to be something for local. I'd been sort of burnt out by all the politics. I'd been doing a lot of, I worked on Central American Solidarity work and a lot of 1199 healthcare worker organizing and women organizing. And I was sort of sick of dealing only with the left, and I wanted to re-enter mainstream America and see what was happening and sort of not stop preaching to the choir. Anyway, so I wanted this to be a local community center. And eventually, long story, people came in, people came out during the 90s and noughts. The third floor was devoted to anti-prison work, to solidarity with prisoners and trying to reform the mass incarceration prison industrial complex. And then I got really into permaculture in the noughts. In 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, I went everywhere, studied permaculture. I've always been a gardener. I'm a herbalist. I've studied herbal medicine. And so that's when I wanted to start getting these two groups to know each other. I went to Mondragon in 2004 in Spain to the Basque Territory and spent a month there looking at their massive worker co-op structure. I've traveled all over the United States looking at worker co-ops. I've spent a month at various worker co-ops working just to see what it's like, because I wanted this building to be more worker co-op oriented, and I want it to be a worker co-op when I die, but we're not there yet. Anyway, so and finally in 2010, I had originally had two commercial, regular, non-movement people on 2 of the floors, and I did not renew their leases, and just plunged in here with no money to try to create the commons. That was a big mistake. I should have just kept 1 floor so we had income. Anyway, so here we are. We're not. I went into debt and made this fancy first floor. This year we have a cafe in the front, and we have this space in the back that has pretty good top of the line audio visual equipment. So whatever we do can be here and global if we want it to be live streamed. But the idea, which is not that apparent yet, was to bring these two sets of people together. The people who are like lefty activists, changing the world by opposing whatever is out there right now and trying to do it either by grabbing the levers of the state through elections or through nonprofit or community organizing to change policy at the grassroots level, whatever. All those people who are trying to do that. And those people who are, whether for food or shelter or clothing or transportation or whatever, are creating new economic institutions, mostly co-ops, and trying to network them to create little clusters of new economy so that we can learn how to produce, with democracy among ourselves and management, and replace gradually in our own neighborhoods the existing non-democratic economic institutions while we are figuring out a way to sustain ourselves. Because if it's going to be for the long term, we have to learn how to sustain ourselves. That's my 2 bits. Gotta go.
Thank you.
Melissa's a legend here in the neighborhood, so it's really quite a miracle that GCAS found this place.
It really was bizarre.
Really bizarre, but fantastic. Man,